Let's bring in from the Washington Examiner, Philip Wegman, from the Independent Women's Forum, Senior Fellow Patrice Lee-Onwuka, and from MaxFunds.com, co-founder Jonas Max Ferris. Welcome all. Philip, why don't you take the politics right off the top on this? And Blake went through some of it. And, you know, notwithstanding, Jonas will talk about the market in a second, but notwithstanding today's 200-point advance for the time being, there's a lot of uncertainty when you talk to investors about what the president really wants to do. On the one hand, you know, he's been pretty clear for years on trade and what his goals are, and that this, you know, these tariffs are not a negotiating position. But then this morning in his tweet, he seemed to say, well, maybe it is a negotiating position on NAFTA. And then as you heard from Peter Navarro, no, it's not at all. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Are you?
Well, the problem here is this president has struggled to understand that his words are tantamount to actions. He says something and the markets react, and so do people here on Capitol Hill. And there's a lot of uncertainty about what he actually wants to accomplish in the end. As far as politics is concerned, the president has had one very significant achievement in his first year in office. That has been job growth. And a lot of Republicans have to be asking themselves right now, why would you monkey with this ahead of the midterm elections? Things are going very well. Basic economics tells us that tariffs don't work out. They didn't work for President Bush in 2002. They didn't work out for President Obama later with his tire tariff. So why would he throw a wrench into the market at this moment? I don't think Republicans are very happy, and this is one more thing that's got them on edge going into those midterm elections.
Well, that is an interesting point. Patrice, I'll go to you on that Philip brings up, because Paul Ryan's spokesperson, the Speaker's spokesperson, Ashley Strong, put a statement out a short time ago saying that they're extremely worried about the consequences of a trade war and are urging the White House to not advance with this plan. That's how she worded it. The new tax reform law has boosted the economy, and we certainly don't want to jeopardize those gains. So, you know, Philip's right, Patrice, that they're hitting back at this. Let me just hold on to the question for a moment, because it looks like the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is just pulling up to the White House. You see the President and the First Lady have come out to greet the Prime Minister. His Prime Minister and Mrs. Netanyahu are now going to be on their way into the White House. As Blake Berman told us a moment ago when he reported on this, we'll get what we call a pool spray right at the top of this meeting. That means the comments that we hear from these two leaders at a short time won't be carried live, but will be taped and then carried back to a location and played back to us. You see these two old friends greeting each other there. This Prime Minister comes at an interesting time for him in terms of what he's dealing with at home. The corruption probe that's been going on for some time. He was questioned, he and his wife, by the police about that on Friday. And that is something that has been hanging over his head at home. But he has said he wants to come here to the United States and talk principally about Iran with the President of the United States. Obviously, other issues could come up. We're told the President's son-in-law, who's come under scrutiny himself here, as the two leaders wave, and they'll head in now for their meeting inside the White House. Jared Kushner will be at this meeting today, which also adds an interesting twist to it. Okay, we're going to get to that in some more detail. And again, we'll have the comments from the President, we hope. Patrice, let me pick back up with you on what I was talking about with trade, because there are Republicans, and Paul Ryan's the latest, to really push back hard on this. What do you make of it?
I'm not surprised. I mean, I think there are other countries who will look at Paul Ryan's district, for example, or other Republicans, and think about all of the manufacturers in their districts and how, you know, a trade war would impact them politically. You know, it's really not something that we want to see undermine these tariffs, undermining the good work that's been done in this economy, but also be the result of the tax cuts. Right. I mean, when we think about what the tariffs are going to impact, it's not just cars, and cars are a big deal. Everything from beer cans to ladders. You're talking about a lot of consumer goods that are going to be taxed. You know, really, that's what a tariff is going to be. It's going to be a tax, and we need to see that right now. We don't need to see a loss of jobs either in industries that will be vulnerable because of the tariffs.
Now, Jonas, you pick up the most difficult part of all this, interpreting the market's reaction to it. I know Gary Cohn and others had supposedly advised the president that if he goes ahead with something like this, it would be disastrous for markets. And we did see a sell-off at the end of last week, and even this morning, but now we've turned higher by about 200 points on the Dow, bouncing off of those lows. What do you make of the markets and how they're taking all this?
Well, the initial reaction was very frightening, because the initial reaction was assuming there would be some sort of trade war, which may or may not happen. I mean, I don't know if you can win any of this tariff trade war, but so far it looks like there isn't going to be a trade war. Trump's winning, so to say. And he was very aggressive, saying he would tax cars, say, out of the EU. That is a huge tariff to add all of a sudden. It would be very scary for Germany and other countries. and that could keep them out of the fray. You know, at the end of the day, the U.S. is in the catbird seat. I'm hearing a lot of, why would you want to undo all the good that's been done? You could also make the case that if you're going to have a tariff trade war, you'd want to do it right after, when the economy's strong, when you just cut corporate taxes and they have a lot of buffer now to eat these costs without passing them on to consumers.
Right.
That wasn't the case 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. Again, I'm not pro-tariff, pro-trade war at all. I don't even want to bring these old industries back to America. That said, this has been a Trump thing since the 80s. If you go back to David Letterman interviews, he was talking about this and the trade imbalances with Japan at the time. That was the bugaboo, not China. The point is, he's been wanting to have this trade shut on for a long time. And
I know.
If you're going to have it, we have a little room here, and he aims to play tough. And I got to tell you, we buy more stuff than we sell. We sell a lot of services, not a lot of goods, and nobody wants to lose us as a consumers. I don't know. We never really know how aggressive other countries are going to play this game, and we might be about to find out. It could be scary for stocks. And I don't think it's a net positive to any company, because as all these free trade groups will tell you, they want to have free goods and services, blah, 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 blah. But for the average person in America, it could look like a win. It looks like he's doing some of the things he talked about. Politically, he could come across as a tough guy who went to war with China and they backed down. I mean, that's how it could play out as well.
It's a quick last point, Phil. I think Jonas raises a really, really key element of all this, is that for all these other issues that the president has brought up, we see him change his mind on things sometimes in the course of the same day or the same meeting, but not on this. Jonas is right. He's 30-plus years of consistency, which may raise the odds. Is that fair, that we might actually end up in a real-life trade war?
Well, when you look at the president, he's nothing if he's not consistent when it comes to some of these longer promises that he's made. And on trade, this is something that he definitely has wanted to do for a long time. That said, it's going to be very difficult for Republicans, because they can't hit Nancy Pelosi over the head for being disingenuous when she talks about crumbs, when you are going to see prices increase on, like Sarah said, everything, from baseball bats to beer cans.
The Campbell soup can that Wilbur Ross was holding up. Yeah,
exactly. These are going to hurt the people at the lower ends of the spectrum, and this is not something that President Trump, I think, has thought through. So, either Paul Ryan or Mitch McConnell, I think that they need to, put a bug in his ear.
They're trying to, apparently. Thanks, guys. We've got to run. We're going to cover this Netanyahu discussion as well. We appreciate all of you coming on as we await those comments from the president and from the prime minister.